was early morning in the city, that rare time of day when everything feels new again. The sky was still painted with the soft blues and pale oranges of sunrise. Birds chirped from the tops of buildings and telephone wires, adding a natural melody to the usual silence before the city fully woke up. Unlike most days, this morning felt special. The air was fresh, noticeably so. There had been light rain the night before, washing away the dust and heat that had hung in the streets for days. Now, a cool breeze flowed through the narrow alleys and wide avenues, carrying with it the clean scent of wet stone, morning dew, and the faint aroma of blooming flowers from balcony gardens. People were beginning to stir. Joggers in bright athletic wear ran along the river walk, their footsteps rhythmic and light. Some wore earbuds, others preferred the natural sound of the city waking up. They breathed in deeply, smiling, grateful for the rare freshness that surrounded them. Even the city's usual scent, a mix of traffic, concrete, and cooking oil, seemed to have been replaced by something purer, almost countryside-like. Along the sidewalks, shopkeepers rolled up their shutters, greeting the morning with calm energy. A bakery on the corner already had its ovens going. The smell of freshly baked bread and pastries spilled out onto the street, mixing with the cool, clean air in a way that made every passerby pause for just a second. A man in a suit stopped to inhale deeply before stepping inside for his usual croissant and coffee. Children with school bags walked with their parents, some still rubbing sleep from their eyes. A few chased pigeons around the fountain in the small square, their laughter echoing against the buildings. Trees lining the sidewalks rustled gently, their leaves still damp and shining in the early light. Drops of water clung to parked cars, creating tiny rainbows when the sun hit them just right. On the rooftop of a tall apartment building, a woman stood with a cup of tea in hand. She closed her eyes and breathed in deeply. The air didn't carry the sharp sting of car fumes or the heaviness of city dust. It was light, fresh, almost like standing near the ocean. For the first time in a long while, she left her windows open wide. Even the traffic seemed to move more slowly this morning, as if the entire city had decided to take a deep breath and enjoy the moment. Cyclists passed quietly, bells ringing gently. The buses were not overcrowded, and some passengers were seen smiling out the window, watching the sunlight dance on the glass-covered skyscrapers. In the city park, early risers walked their dogs along gravel paths. The grass was lush and green, still sparkling with droplets from the rain. The air smelled like pine and soil. A few yoga enthusiasts had gathered in a corner of the park, stretching in silence under tall trees. Their instructor spoke softly, reminding them to focus on their breath, to feel the air fill their lungs and bring them peace. A man sat on a bench reading a newspaper, occasionally looking up to admire the way the wind played with the leaves. A child nearby blew soap bubbles, which floated up into the morning air, catching sunlight and reflecting colors before popping gently. Everything felt slower, more deliberate. The usual rush of city life had paused for just a few hours. As the sun climbed higher, the city's true personality would gradually return: the honking horns, the fast pace, the crowded sidewalks. But for now, there was something rare and precious in the atmosphere. It was a reminder that even a city of concrete and steel can have moments of calm and clarity. Office workers walking toward tall glass towers stopped at street vendors, chatting casually over breakfast wraps and fruit juices. A newspaper headline read, "City sees clear skies after a week of rain," and indeed, the sky above was a perfect blue, unmarred by haze or pollution. For those who had lived in the city for years, mornings like this were something to be treasured. They reminded people of how the city used to feel before the constant noise and endless construction. For newcomers, it was a surprising kind of beauty, a calm that contrasted with the usual chaos they'd expected. By late morning, the noise would return, the streets would fill, but in those first few golden hours, the city was transformed. The fresh air, the light wind, and the softness of morning had brought out something gentle in the heart of the metropolis. It was still the same city, tall, busy, alive, but today it was breathing a little easier, and so were its people. Jika kamu ingin versi cerita ini dengan dia lebih puitis, atau versi anak-anak, atau ingin saya ubah ke dalam bentuk audio storytelling atau PDF, tinggal beritahu saya ya. Anda bilang lebih banyak lajikat bilang tentu, berikut lanjutan. Dari cerita sebelumnya, agar durasinya benar-benar cukup untuk dibaca atau didengarkan selama lebih dari 10 menit. Kita lanjutkan suasana kota dengan udara segar dari berbagai sudut pandang dan tempat di kota. Lanjutan fresh air in the city part 2. As the morning slowly unfolded, more people began to step outside, each one quietly noticing that something felt different, better. The usual tension in the air, the unspoken rush that seemed to drive everyone forward every day, had softened. It was as if the whole city had exhaled overnight. In a small cafe on the corner of Maple and Fifth, the barista leaned against the counter for a moment. Outside the glass doors, sunlight filtered through the trees, casting moving shadows on the sidewalk. He could see a couple sitting at a table under a bright red umbrella. They were holding hands across the table, sipping lattes, saying very little, but smiling often. Behind them, a small dog lay curled at their feet, its nose twitching in the morning air. Just across the street, an old man was tending to the plants on his balcony. It was his daily ritual, but today he took longer. The marigolds had bloomed brighter than usual, and the lavender gave off a stronger scent, thanks to the rain. He poured water gently into each pot and hummed to himself an old tune he hadn't thought of in years. Down by the riverside promenade, early cyclists cruised along the smooth path. Some wore headphones, others simply listened to the soft sound of the water flowing. There was no rush. No one was weaving aggressively through the crowd or yelling into a phone. Just the sound of rubber tires on pavement and the gentle chirping of birds hopping along the railings. And for those who worked night shifts, the street cleaners, the hospital nurses, the factory workers, the morning air was like a reward. As they finished their long hours, stepping outside to head home, the freshness in the air made their tiredness feel lighter. Some of them stopped for a coffee, others sat for a moment on a bench just to breathe. One young nurse named Amira took a longer route home just to walk through the park. The sky above was a crystal blue, with clouds floating like islands in a calm sea. She paused to take a photo of a flower bed. The tulips were still wet with dew, their petals glowing. She smiled and sent the photo to her mother with a message. The city looks so beautiful today, even in the business district, where the glass towers stood like silent giants. The usual hard energy felt softer. Office workers lingered a little longer outside the lobby doors, chatting casually, holding their coffee cups with two hands, just to soak in the morning. The usual gray suits didn't look as dull against the bright, clean air.